Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri. And I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. As we continue our series on the Christian creeds, today's Do You Know question is, do you know the meaning of the Creedal statement, one God, Father Almighty, Creator of heaven and earth, visible and invisible? As we continue exploring the Creed, we have to acknowledge, as we've done in the past, the limitations of language and symbols in trying to articulate the mysteries of our faith. But the words that we use and the important symbol language that we use help us get a doorway or entryway into the mysteries of our faith. Because it's important for us to continually seek understanding for our faith. This is what theology is all about. It's faith seeking understanding. So we affirm from up front, we affirm belief in one God, in contrast to many other faith traditions who believe in multiple gods. For us, one God is understood as the monotheism of both Judaism and Christianity and Islam. However, we as Christians articulate our God as one God in three persons, a God who is one and yet communal. And so that differs us with the other monotheistic religion, and yet the way we articulate God is actually the oneness of God in line with both Judaism and Islam. We now move to the word Father. And Father is a word that we use to articulate God, our understanding of God. It is not that God is male, for God has no gender. And rather, the word Father is kind of communicates a relationship or an understanding of the relationship that God has with us, rather than a description of what God is all about. In other words, the word Father communicates the notion of love, care, and concern, the parental love, care, and concern of God for us. And so that is what Father communicates. And since, however, in our tradition, the word Father is culturally conditioned, we have to use other words to expand our understanding of the loving care and concern of God for us. In biblical tradition, many other words have been used to communicate and link to that loving concern of God for us. Words like rock, God is fortress, God is eagle, God is nursing mother, God is mother hen. All these words really speak about God's loving care and concern for us. And so it's important to use and to link with those words along with the word Father in our understanding of God's loving relationship with us. The other word that we use in the Creed right after Father is the word Almighty. And Almighty communicates something about God that essentially says that God is different from us. We as creatures are limited and dependent. And the word Almighty about God communicates the fact that God is not limited and is not dependent. God is at the very same time close to us in loving compassion relationship for Father, and yet at the same time Almighty communicates that distance and that mysterious nature of God. Theology has used words like immanence to communicate God's nearness to us and God's loving relationship to us, and has used the word transcendence to communicate that distance and that mysterious and incomprehensible nature of God. And so these are two words that communicate an essential aspects of God, God's closeness to us, and yet at the same time God's transcendence and distance from us. We move into the word Creator. Now, Creator is an affirmation of God as the one who brought everything into being all of creation and ourselves into being out of a loving relationship with us. It's God's love flowing outside of the Trinity that is a result of all of God's creation. And so as a result, God creates out of love and suffuses all of creation with love. This was intended to counter much of the early Greek Platonic philosophy that entered into the church and some of people's thinking in the early church, that essentially said that the material world is evil and is not the result of a good God. A good God would not create an evil world. The Christian tradition clearly responded and affirmed the fact that no, our God is a loving God, and all of creation is created good by God. As a matter of fact, not just good, but very good. And all of creation is the outflow of God's love, filled with all of the goodness that God put into it, and it's an overflow of love, God's presence in the world and in our lives. And so God created the world good, and we affirm that in the Creedal statement, creator of heaven and earth, as well as all those things that are seen as well as unseen, visible and the invisible. All are created by God, and all are created good. And all that God has created is suffused with God's wisdom, God's presence, and God's love. And as I said, this is a directly response to much of some of the early philosophical traditions from Greece that came into the early church. So I hope this has helped to explain just a bit of the creedal statements that we use. One God, Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, visible and invisible. And I hope you'll return again to more Do You Know series questions as we continue to explore the creedal statements and the mysteries of our faith. Thank you very much.